It's not about the collapse of the American empire or some doomsday prophecy. This is about a quiet phone call that happened in Beijing in March 2023. The UAE, one of America's closest allies in the Middle East, agreed to sell oil to China in yuan. Not dollars. Yuan. For 50 years, there's been an unspoken rule: if you want oil, you pay in US dollars. Period. That system, the petrodollar, is the reason America can print trillions without collapsing. It's the reason the dollar is the world's reserve currency. And now? The UAE is walking away. Here's what that means: the financial architecture that's kept America on top since 1974 is cracking. And most Americans have no idea it's happening. So the question isn't if the petrodollar ends. It's what happens when it does. Here is Mr. Rashid. He's a senior energy trader at one of Abu Dhabi's state-owned oil companies. Been in the industry for 15 years. His entire career has been built on one assumption: oil equals dollars. Here's how it used to work. China wants to buy 1 million barrels of UAE oil. But China's currency is the yuan. So first, they convert yuan to dollars. Then they buy the oil in dollars. Then the UAE converts those dollars into dirhams, or keeps them in dollars as reserves. Every transaction flows through the US banking system. Every trade gets processed by American banks. The Federal Reserve sees everything. Rashid's job was simple: negotiate price, deliver oil, collect dollars. Rinse, repeat. But in 2022, something changed. China came to the table with a different offer: what if we paid you in yuan? At first, Rashid's bosses laughed. Why would we accept yuan? The dollar is stable. The dollar is global. The yuan is risky. But then China sweetened the deal. They offered a 3% discount on all future oil purchases, if the UAE accepted yuan. 3% on billions of dollars of trade. That's real money. And here's the kicker: China also offered to invest $50 billion into UAE infrastructure projects. Ports. Renewable energy. Tech hubs. But only if the UAE agreed to diversify away from dollar dependence. Rashid's bosses stopped laughing. By mid-2023, the UAE was accepting yuan for oil sales. They weren't abandoning the dollar completely, but they were no longer exclusively tied to it. Rashid told me this in an interview: we didn't betray America. We just stopped letting one country control our options. That sentence is more important than it sounds. Rashid's story isn't an isolated case. It's the beginning of a global pattern. Let's zoom out. The petrodollar system, how it worked in 1974, the US made a deal with Saudi Arabia. Simple terms: Saudi Arabia agrees to sell oil only in US dollars. In exchange, America provides military protection and buys Saudi debt. Other oil-producing countries followed. OPEC adopted the same model. The result? Every country that wanted oil had to hold dollars. That created automatic demand for the dollar, which let America borrow cheaply, run deficits, and print money without inflation spiraling out of control. It's been called America's greatest geopolitical hack. But here's what's happening now. Statistic number 1, the dollar's share of global reserves in 2000, 71% of global foreign exchange reserves were held in US dollars. Today? It's 58%. And falling. That might not sound dramatic. But in the world of reserve currencies, a 13-point drop in 2 decades is an earthquake. Statistic number 2, oil trade outside the dollar in 2022, approximately 80% of global oil trade was conducted in dollars. By the end of 2023, that number dropped to 73%. China now purchases 20% of its oil imports in yuan. India is exploring rupee-based oil deals with Russia. Saudi Arabia, the anchor of the petrodollar system, is negotiating yuan sales with China. The Saudis haven't done it yet. But the fact that they're talking about it? That's the crack in the dam. Statistic number 3, the rise of bilateral trade agreements in 2020. There were 12 major bilateral trade agreements that bypassed the dollar. In 2024, there are over 60. The UAE isn't alone. Russia and India trade in rubles and rupees. Brazil and China trade in yuan and reals. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are actively discussing a shared currency to rival the dollar. This isn't theory. It's policy. The comparison: System A versus System B. System A, Petrodollar, all oil trades flow through U.S. banks. America controls the financial plumbing. Sanctions are enforceable because dollars are required. System B, multipolar currency system, oil trades happen in yuan, rubles, dirhams, euros. No single country controls the system. U.S. sanctions lose teeth because countries can trade outside the dollar. We're watching System A die in real time. If you're realizing this affects your savings, your taxes, and your country's power more than you thought, hit subscribe. We break down the financial shifts the mainstream media ignores. The ones that actually change your life. And if someone you know still thinks the dollar is untouchable, share this video. They need to see what's coming. Now, let's talk about why this isn't all bad news. Okay. Pause. Before you start buying gold or building a bunker, let me give you the reality check. Trade-off number 1, the dollar isn't collapsing tomorrow. The US dollar is still the most liquid, most trusted currency on the planet. It's involved in 88% of all foreign exchange transactions. The euro is second at 31%. The yuan? Just 7%. Even if the UAE, China, and Saudi Arabia all switch to yuan tomorrow, the dollar will still dominate global finance for the next decade. Minimum. The question isn't if the dollar disappears. It's whether it remains dominant, or just important. Trade-off number 2, multipolar currency systems are messy. You know what's great about the petrodollar? Simplicity. One currency. One clearing system. Everyone knows the rules. A world where oil trades in 10 different currencies? That's chaos. Exchange rate risk. Currency volatility. More middlemen. Higher costs. The UAE might save money trading in yuan with China, but they'll lose money converting yuan to euros for European buyers. There's no free lunch. Trade-off number 3, China's yuan isn't ready. China wants the yuan to replace the dollar. But here's the problem, their currency isn't fully convertible. You can't freely move yuan in and out of China without government approval. That's a deal breaker for most countries. Why trade in a currency that Beijing controls? Until China opens its capital account, which it won't, because it would lose control, the yuan can't become a true reserve currency. Trade-off number 4, America still has leverage. The U.S. military protects shipping lanes. The U.S. Navy secures the Persian Gulf. The U.S. provides the security umbrella that lets oil flow freely. If the UAE or Saudi Arabia fully abandon the dollar, do they also abandon U.S. military protection? That's not a comfortable question. Trade-off number 5, this could hurt you. If the dollar loses reserve currency status, here's what happens to Americans. Imported goods get expensive. We import 40% of what we consume. Interest rates rise. Because foreign countries stop buying U.S. debt. Inflation stays high. Because printing money has real consequences again. The petrodollar system subsidized American lifestyles for 50 years. Losing it means paying the true cost of things. So no, this isn't a simple America bad, multipolar world good story. It's a story about the end of a system that benefited some people enormously, and hurt others quietly. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about what we're optimizing for. The petrodollar system optimized for American dominance. It gave the U.S. unilateral power to sanction countries, print money, and control global trade. That was great, if you're American. But if you're the UAE? Or China? Or Russia? You spent 50 years playing a game where someone else wrote the rules. Where your oil, your resources, your economy were denominated in someone else's currency. The UAE isn't pivoting away from the dollar because they hate America. They're doing it because they finally have options. And that gets to the deeper question, should any single country control the global financial system? The American answer for 50 years has been, yes. Us. Because we're stable, we're democratic, we're trustworthy. And for a long time, that was true. But after 2008, when American banks nearly collapsed the global economy, trust started to crack. After 2022, when the US froze $300 billion of Russian reserves overnight, countries realized that holding dollars meant giving America a loaded gun. And now they're asking, what if we just don't? Rashid, the energy trader, put it this way, we're not trying to destroy the dollar. We're just trying to survive in a world where America might not always be our friend. That's the shift. It's not ideological. It's pragmatic. So here's the question I want you to sit with. If you were a small country, surrounded by superpowers, would you bet everything on one currency? Or would you hedge? And if you're American, are you willing to accept a world where the US is still powerful, still influential, but no longer the only voice that matters? There's no easy answer. But the wrong answer is pretending nothing's changing. Drop your take in the comments. Seriously. Are you team dollar, team multipolar, or team I'm moving to gold? I read every comment, and I want to know where you stand. Also, hit that like button if this changed how you think about currency. It tells YouTube to share this with people who still believe the dollar is untouchable. And if you want the next video to cover what happens if Saudi Arabia actually switches to yuan, let me know below. Because that's when things get really interesting. This isn't the end of American power. But it might be the end of American financial dominance. And that's a future we should all be thinking about.